There we go. Today's a very special day for me. It's a little bit of a full cycle moment. Everyone starts by consuming something from Austin. I've been seeing videos on Scaffold Liter for forever now. So thank you for coming here. I have to thank you for a lot of things. First of all, you've been supporting OpenSense. We're getting a stream from the BuilGuidl. So thank you so much for that. It's pretty much what's allowing me to live at this moment. Thank you for the service you do, on the Ethereum community, for being here today. I have a list of questions for you. And yeah, bro, welcome.
Thanks for having me. That's a warm introduction, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Stay dry out in that rain.
No problem. So the first question I have for you, going back on your background, is about the master's degree you decided to do, which is electrical engineering. Why? You like to fizzle with circuits, you like the coding, logic gates. Why electrical engineering?
I think it was like human interface. Like hardware is cool, and it's cool to build like a robot that can like do stuff. I remember in my dorm room, the first time I got just like a simple LED to blink with my printer port. It was like super fun. it was like it was an exciting moment.
Now I know how the magic works.
Yeah, I can control the light. Yeah, I turned it into like a fish feeder, and it would automatically shake this motor that would dump like food into my fish tank.
Amazing stuff, buddy. And not a lot of people maybe know this, but you did quite a bit of freelancing as a game developer with Facebook games, right? And I remember that at some point in the past, that was really profitable for some people. How was your experience back then?
I had a couple games in the early Facebook dev like app store. And I was able to survive on it, but it wasn't like a lot of money. I made like a horse racing game, and it kind of had a game currency and some fun aspects of like raising your horse and racing it and kind of social stuff. But I didn't get rich, that's for sure. But I was able to survive on it as an indie developer.
Really cool. I mean, developing games always seemed magical for me because, at least when you start thinking about the physics aspects and everything that has to be controlled, it seems like a very hard area to get in, Have you still been doing something with games recently? You still be fiddling with that?
Yeah, for real. I think games are really fun to build. I always go back to like developer games. I think it's really fun to build like a smart contract building game, but that's like a really niche audience. So I'm leaning back away from that a little bit and thinking about like more consumer apps, like friend tech style apps and small games and things we can do at engagements at first, but then maybe at scale later on.
Awesome. Since we're talking about games, I'm just going to ask you because I need you. What is your favorite game?
Oh, man. Probably like SimCity 2000 awesome. Or like Age of Empires 2, and then into like Kerbal Space Program and Factorio, like kind of builder games, scale games, sim games. Yeah.
And talking a little bit about your dive into Ethereum, I know that something that got you into Ethereum was Docker. Can we talk a little bit on how, and man, I'm a huge Docker fan, I love it. Sometimes I need to explain to people on Web3 why Docker is useful, because we have so many new developers that they don't understand several aspects of Web3, Web2 development, or just development overall, like microservices and everything. And Docker is just magical for me. You don't need to hustle with development environments anymore. That can get really tiresome, So can we discuss a little bit on how Docker led you into Ethereum?
I think infrastructure as code and just like normal like DevOps stuff. I feel like you kind of have to be a DevOps person to be an ETH dev because there's so much like RPCs and stuff like that involved. And I think that like at the time, microservices were kind of a big deal. So being able to manage microservices, like Docker was just handy for those kind of things. So I feel like using Docker and messing around with infrastructure made it easier for me to run my own node on Ethereum and build apps that have like an indexer or something like that. I think just like general cool programming practices like that, just like, oh, I get nerdy and excited about Docker. I got the same way about smart contracts. And I think that's one of the things that kind of pulls people down the rabbit hole. So maybe it was just, maybe not Docker specifically, but the fact that I dove deep on Docker is maybe like a reason why I missed Ethereum at first, because then later I discovered Ethereum. But it's my tendency to kind of like go deep and really explore something and use the technology for building something new.
And what made you believe in Ethereum, because for me at least, that was such a life-changing opportunity, and something that I've seen you talk that is a little bit neglected in the field is the financial aspect. So when I saw it, I said, hey, I can make maybe 2-3 times my salary here working as a Solidity developer. And that really pulled me into Solidity and Ethereum, and I really loved it, all the memes and everything, how the community works. What made you believe back then? Because this was much earlier than now.
Well, there's definitely still like a great community around it at all stages, even very early. But I think that it's not maybe even the community. The community was like a thing that like kept me here. But I would say that wasn't the thing that drew me in. I think like using the thing and realizing that like the app that I was going to deploy would be deployed forever and not even I could stop it. And anyone from anywhere can get to it. And anyone from anywhere can extend it permissionlessly and like build on top of it. All of those aspects of a decentralized app are just like really interesting to me. And I think it was more about that, why I really fell in love with it. And then, you go to a conference and you meet other folks, or you get on crypto Twitter and you meet other folks that are interested in the same thing. And there is kind of a really cool community that has come up around it too.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. And talking a little bit about the gap in traditional development and Web3 development, so we were just talking about all these nerdy concepts and standards of DevOps, coding. Do you feel that we still have a big gap regarding the newcoming Web3 developers? A lot of people are being onboarded through audits. Sometimes they never used Linux. They don't know how to use the terminal. How do you see that gap today?
I think like audits are a good thing to lean against there a little bit. Is like if we looked at the audit landscape 2 years ago, it was a lot worse. Like it was harder and slower, and now it's getting better. There's faster, cheaper, there's a lot more interesting kind of like protocols that have sprung up around auditing on both sides or connecting each side, and that's like made the whole space better. So I think that like I don't know if we're like how far along we are, but it seems like we're in a good place with a lot of good infrastructure, with a cool auditing ecosystem, and it's almost like the application side is still kind of maybe the next spot that should flourish. And it seems like it's getting close with L2s and account abstraction, that like maybe the next big wave is like an application layer wave, kind of like the FinTech thing. I've kind of doubled down on that now, I guess.
I'm really conflicted regarding layer 2s, because in the end, I feel that Ethereum is walking or is trying to walk to be faster at some point, with the splurge, the surge, and we are now building all these side chains and ZK EVMs, and it's really hard to know what kind of research in there is really worth it. We have all these chains, all these tokens, and all these funds going around, but it makes me feel a little bit weird. I mean, I really like optimism. I really like Arbitrum. I see a lot of value in what they're doing, but how can we be maybe, how can we see the real research being done in there? How can we see the real value of these technologies?
I don't know. I'm kind of like application layer. So if we're like diving into like how decentralized each L2 is, I think it's going to be different. And I think it's going to come down to the users to kind of make the decisions of like how decentralized they want their thing to be or how decentralized it has to be. And different L2s will make different trade-offs. But yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer your question, but I think that like as an application developer, it's more exciting to deploy something over on an L2 sometimes because you can get, you know, new kinds of users and new kinds of apps.
Yeah, you touched on something really interesting there, which is the ideology of decentralization versus the practical usage of an ecosystem, because we also may have, you know, Ethereum blockchains for companies with private data. So there's a little bit, we need to find a balance in there, right? Sometimes I feel that we pull the decentralization flag too hard, you know?
Yeah, I think one of our main metrics should be users. And yeah, there's a trade-off there. And being able to custody an account on a fully decentralized network is hard, for sure.
Awesome. And talking a little bit about the Ethereum ecosystem, actually, outside of the Ethereum ecosystem, you think there's life outside the EVM? You know, because most things we're seeing are be building around Ethereum, some version of Ethereum, some fork of Ethereum. We do have some people trying, you know, Rust and everything, but doesn't seem to be picking up speed.
Yeah, I think this is definitely my echo chamber. I'm not sure. I'm kind of an EVM maxi. This is like how all my tools work. I just build EVM stuff. I think that you mentioned Rust there, and I think the Rust Ethereum space is one of the like best Ethereum spaces. I think of all the little ecosystems that have come around, I think the Rust folks within Ethereum are like very highly technical and interesting and cool builders. But in terms of like what's going on outside of the EVM, I feel like that's definitely kind of a blind spot of mine, just because I'm tinkering mostly with EVM stuff, and that's where my tooling is.
Amazing, buddy. I just want to touch a little bit on audits and security. You know, for me, it seems it's really hard. Before Code Arena, it seems to be really hard to get a proper audit of your code. You know, because you have these companies and you have these really experienced Solidity developers, but there's so many attack vectors, so many 0 days, so many things that can be explored, you know. Do you remember a hack that really caught your attention and how it felt at the time?
Hack that has happened?
Yes.
Oh, man. I feel like yeah, I don't know. I don't follow this space like that close, but like the big ones that ended up going, like the Ronin hack was really bad because it ended up going to North Korea or something like that, right? I feel like those are scary for me.
Yeah, true, bro. And I want to talk about enabling effing around, because that's also something you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
You know? And what motivates you to keep exploring, especially developer experience, man? Because this could be all, you know, a work that you're throwing away. This technology could die tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that like if you build a good tool, a lot of times it's like kind of not relevant in 6 months or a year in our ecosystem. But that's the cool part about our ecosystem. I think that that's also why it's fun to build in, is sometimes it's Wild West style and you're building tools that, you know, 15 other people might use. But it's like, maybe that's 1,500 eventually. But I think that like tools are fun to build. And as a builder, I kind of like making tools. I don't know. I think a lot of developers like making tools and toolkits just because it helps them scale up their own work. So being able to make something that helps me get my stuff done, but it can be open and other people can use it. And that's like a really cool kind of multiplicative kind of feeling.
Amazing, buddy. And since we're talking about building, and a lot of people hear this on YouTube, Can we talk a little bit about BuilGuidl and SpeedRunEthereum and how true builders can find support through your initiatives?
Chill it. Yeah, for sure. Like SpeedRunEthereum is the spot to go if you're a developer looking to get into Ethereum. It kind of takes you through building a handful of things with the state-of-the-art tool, Scaffoldy 2. And you build things like a token vendor and a DEX and a multi-sig, and it teaches you all the things that you can build on Ethereum and kind of takes you through a bunch of the aha moments that help you understand kind of what's happening and how it works and what kind of things you can build on Ethereum and what kind of things you shouldn't. So it's a good introduction into becoming an Ethereum developer, like targeted at technical audiences or semi-technical audiences. So yeah, SpeedRunEthereum is like the main shill there. We're using the tool Scaffoldy 2, and then you mentioned BuilGuidl also. BuilGuidl is kind of the DAO around all of this stuff. It's sort of like the incentivization mechanism. Things like SpeedRunEthereum and Scaffoldy are thanks to tons and tons of developers that have helped build it, and we stream ETH to them, and we also have kind of like small grant scholarship programs for other folks in the ecosystem. But a lot of it all starts with SpeedRunEthereum. And if you're interested in any of that stuff, you should go through SpeedRunEthereum and get in that way.
Amazing, amazing, buddy. Do you have any projects that surprised you on the BuilGuidl, like something that, you thought was really cool?
Yeah, of course. Like all the time, there's always a fun build going on. We have this thing called Bowtie Fridays, where every other Friday we get together and show off what we're building. And there's always always one there that like surprises me that it's like very highly technical. There's always one there that's like just super fun and creative. And a lot of times it's just folks finishing up their DEX or their multi-sig or something from SpeedRunEthereum. So some of them are things that other people have built, but they're actually like really cool. And once you get a hold of them, it kind of teaches you so many things. So there's a ton of builds at buildguidl.com. If you like go into the app and sort by builds, you can see kind of they're ranked in a pretty weird way, but there's a ton of really good builds there.
Awesome, awesome. And something that I really like is the idea of continuously streaming because, kind of solves a little bit of the DAO problem in a level that you always hold the developer accountable. So every time you get a little bit of a stream of money, you need to justify why you're getting that. So I think that's a genius idea. And it's a nicer way of filter, who's working, who's not, and everything. And brother, I want to talk a little bit about a more personal aspect and something that I saw doing research regarding what you did in the past and everything. Growing in the community space, coming from a developer background is a really male-dominated field in the sense that there's a lot of dominance, and you need to show that you're good, you need to show that you're the best, and sometimes you approach, and Web3 feels a little bit different than that. It's definitely more collaborative. It's definitely more people are definitely more open. So how do we become less arrogant and dumb when approaching communities, when learning, really like opening our heart, because I know you have been through that process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even looking at Bowtie Friday, it's almost all dudes that show up. Like, we need to do a much better job of that. I think we're seeing glimpses of this in the ecosystem with Boys Club and some other initiatives like that. They are creating products that are bringing in more mainstream audiences and less male-dominated developer folks, and we just want to see more of that. I agree. I don't know. I think maybe that doesn't totally answer the question, but I want to see more of that, and I hope to see more of that. Yeah.
Oh, there's no problem. And you decided to become, maybe you didn't decide, but life took you and turned you into an educator. And I saw you defining yourself as a high leverage finder, teacher, which I completely agree. If I want to follow the community path, if I want to start connecting and making people collaborate, do I need to have a lot of technical knowledge? Can I only do that after being a super good Solidity developer? Or can I start gathering people today and start doing something like that?
Yeah, that's tricky. I think that most community builders probably have some technical skills, but I don't know if you need to be like super technical to be able to build a good community. I think, by definition, you need to be super technical to like build a thing that's technical. But I think that understanding it and guiding people, I don't think you have to be super technical to do that.
Amazing. And I know you love automation. I know, talking about Scaffold It, talking about BuilGuidl, not BuilGuidl, sorry. Talking about Docker and everything. What have been your feelings on AI? Because now you can do automation, mix that with a little bit of AI and how you're feeling about that.
So rad. Like answering questions for my kids is so much easier with ChatGPT. But also like Copilot, when I'm writing code, I do a lot of like live demos, and it's changed the game for me in terms of, what I can code live in front of a group, when I can just like hail up Copilot with a short comment, and Copilot fills in like the function I'm looking for, like basically gets it. Like it's super powerful and handy. Yeah. So I'm digging it for sure.
And I want to make a special question. I don't know if you have ever thought about it. I just love this question, and I don't get to make it to a lot of people. Who do you think is Satoshi Nakamoto?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
You think about it?
Is Hal Finney the closest?
Like, I'm crazy. I'm the only one thinking about this all the time.
I don't know.
Bro, I think Hal Finney is a good candidate, but he will have to be really, really smart because of the coding styles they found overall on Bitcoin. Bro, let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. What is your view on Bitcoin? What's the future holds? Because we're still dealing with proof of work, which is a little bit of a controversial topic on the Ethereum world. How do you feel that's going to evolve?
I like don't know a ton about the Bitcoin community. Like, I know the product, and I think it's awesome. Like it is like the sort of the thing that brought most of us into decentralization was that the original white paper, and then the product, and how it's like, I don't have any old, like, stories of back in the day I bought mushrooms on Silk Road or anything like that. Like I have owned very little Bitcoin, but I think it's like changed the world, and it's changed the world and created what I do love, which is like the Ethereum ecosystem, and the place that I thrive the most. But in terms of Bitcoin, like, it should keep doing what it's doing. Like, that's the cool thing about it.
Awesome.
I don't know if it needs to change very much, right? Ethereum's the one working like crazy. Like, Bitcoin can be very, very slow and do what it does.
You described a feeling in such a precise manner in one of the videos that I saw, which is the happiness or the excitement we feel when sending funds on Ethereum. Like, any value of Ethereum, clicking the MetaMask button is just like, it's a hush,
Yeah, for real. I love, like yesterday, I had to just like swap a couple tokens, move a few things around. I felt like a freaking wizard, man. It's so cool.
And brother, I have a question for community here is, what is the most interesting aspect of Ethereum in your view? I know you're talking about we having the possibility of having real transactions without a third party and having these programmable scroll. What is the most interesting part of Ethereum for you today?
So I'm just going to echo something that my buddy Brian Gu said, who is echoing something or trying to translate something Vitalik said. But I think that it's there is like censorship resistance. There's all this other stuff. Like, it lives forever. But I think the composability and the permissionless composability is like probably going to be the thing that ends up being the most applicable to like humans and how we use things. So I think that like that level of stuff just like the composability layer. I build one thing and you can permissionlessly build another thing on top of that, or a different front end that interacts with that in a different way. And I think that the way your inventory and your identity follows you from app to app currently, when you move in Ethereum, you're connecting your wallet into different apps. And by doing that, it's like creating this really nice login pattern that's way better than, a different email and password at every site. And we kind of didn't realize that until after you start using it. And then you're like, oh yeah, this is the pattern it should work in. So I think that like that's probably for me the most exciting part, is the composability, that as apps and more user-facing mainstream apps get more traction, the landscape will look really cool, because there will be lots of builders that can build lots of different things on these things as they get more popular.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, buddy. I have one more question here is, what are the implications of Ethereum moving towards a shared architecture in terms of scalability? How does it compare to the other approaches in the blockchain space, like side chains or state channels? Seems to be a very technical question.
Or like alternate L1s. Like definitely this is out of my wheelhouse and over my pay grade. I don't like understand enough about the intricacies of different L1s and L2s. And I would say that I think we will see some fractured stuff. Like we already see a multi-chain kind of world happening, and it goes back to what we were saying about your appetite for decentralization, sort of, and where you are on that scale probably depends on where you'll end up on the different L1s and different scalability things. But I don't know enough about scalability to know what it will look like at the protocol or at the lower level. I just know that we're already seeing a multi-chain world, and we're seeing how apps deal with multi-chain stuff. When you go to Uniswap, you're pulling down a pull-down menu to choose the chain, and there's a different USDC on every chain and a different, an ETH on every chain, and we can show that we could show them all combined, but that sort of abstracts it away a little bit too much, and we could show them all divided, and that sort of abstracts it, or doesn't abstract it away enough. And so this seems like there's something in the middle where you kind of show the total, but it can explode open, and it kind of shows you the different networks and maybe how all of those things we're starting to see people think about. And so whatever the multi-chainness looks underneath, I think the overall UI UX will be a little more complicated, but we're seeing it emerge now, and it kind of makes sense and it works, and kind of hopping between chains and having similar assets between chains and bridging, we're seeing it, and we're seeing the user experience, and it's not that bad so far. So, I mean, there's definitely complaints for sure, and it's confusing sometimes. When you YOLO into a bridge and the money is gone, that period, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, bridges are super
but we're starting to see it emerge, yeah.
Bridges are super tricky. I mean, it's always exciting to wait, until the finality, and just to discover that everything went okay, but the cool thing is that we're testing all these different communication channels. Now people are coming with, all of these architectures, so we can make interoperability between Chainlink just released some CCIP integration. So we seem to be learning and evolving regarding that, Do you like the more technical bytecode decompiling aspect of the EVM? Is MEV something you explore, or is that not really into more the user level language, the language in the user level?
Definitely more user. I like to think of it like hardware, and think of it like that Raspberry Pi, and I like to think of wiring it up and having things be very lean and simple. But I'm still way more on the application layer, building with that mentality, but not at the level of fucking around with bytecode. I don't really do that.
No problem. Brother, I mean, this is the interview. Was really nice. I don't know, community, you guys have questions to make Austin? This is your chance. Austin, please, I would like to, just you have any closing thoughts, any message you want to leave to people that will hear to this in the future?
Yeah, I'm down to close. Open for questions too if someone wants to unmute and ask too.
Yeah. So hey, Austin. So you discussed like your background in Docker. What do you think are some like background that gives you an edge when it comes to Ethereum? Maybe knowing a little bit of networking.
Yeah,
or,
for real.
You know,
like Docker probably is only like at the running a node level. So it's like being a participant in the Ethereum network. Docker has taught me about DevOps. But I think even at a lower level, like going back to hardware, going back to, other disciplines, the way you build a smart contract can very much be like hardware, right? And so if you come from a hardware background, I feel like it's a little bit more helpful. I don't know. We were talking earlier even about auditors that haven't written any code, right? Like it's cool to see different folks be successful.
Yeah. And by hardware, do you mean like all the low level aspect of
Yeah. Like when you're writing in C and you're worried about memory and stuff like that, like being that cautious about how, you are coding and all the different possible outcomes of the code and, that level, like, I think that's just, it's different than someone who has been writing a bunch of object-oriented stuff. And a lot of times when you first get in, you kind of use Ethereum like a database too, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to store their name and their social security number. Then address. No, don't put that on chain.
Yeah. So do you like model Ethereum more like a hardware where like the resources are limited and you have to
I think it's a good mental model. I do think it's a good mental model. Like thinking of like I'm like deploying this thing. They give it like almost like a satellite. I'm like launching into orbit, right? I'm never going to be able to touch it again as soon as I like push this button. And I need to know like all the different possibilities of what it can do, and know there's not a weird edge case, and there's not going to be overflow. Like overflow is a great example of things that we see happen in hacks and early Ethereum stuff, and also in hardware, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, what was your first programming language?
Oh man, probably BASIC. I think my dad taught me BASIC quite early, like maybe like 10. And then a good teacher in my high school taught me C++, and that was game changers because I could make apps. Then like PHP in college and lots of JavaScript. Some low-level stuff, yeah. That's JavaScript is the one to learn, though. I feel like
True.
If you want to build things that people use, like or like apps that people use, you should learn JavaScript.
Yeah, but I think, like you mentioned, JavaScript kind of extracts away a lot of low-level stuff. So because if you like combine just learning level to and maybe using AI or ChatGPT for coding solidity, then you're like mostly left to the mercy of EVM.
Yeah, for real. That's a good point. Like JavaScript and application level stuff is very different than maybe the mental model of Solidity. And so maybe like a developer who comes from like low level and then learns how to do JavaScript is like super powerful because they can like think at that like hardware abstraction, but still build things that people use. I don't know. I guess like, a lot of hardware that people use that's a heck of a skill.
Right. So lastly, what are you working on now, and maybe things that you're excited about in the next 1 year or so?
Yeah, I think kind of similar to what we talked about earlier, like L2s and the application layer is really exciting to me. I think that like building things like progressive web apps, building things that use things like passkeys and different solutions to abstract away the wallet onboarding until after the person like uses it, gets into the network and provides value, and then is like, okay, how do I protect this identity I've created? And then that's when they kind of lean back on learning the wallet stuff. So I think account abstraction is probably maybe doubling down on that same thing. So like L2s, account abstraction, we see like chains like Base coming out and getting a bunch of use on really cool apps like Base Paint. I think that's, to me, the most exciting area. I'm not specifically building a lot of consumer apps myself, but I'm building some consumer prototypes, and they're more about helping us understand how to make Scaffold ETH2 like the best tool for building apps. And so it's like lots of research on building apps. And so what to answer the final question, like what I'm doing recently, there's BuilGuidl and SpeedRunEthereum and Scaffold ETH2, but a lot of it is building stuff on top of Scaffold ETH2 or mentoring folks as they're building stuff on top of Scaffold ETH2, trying to create products that people use. I think getting users is probably the main metric. We're starting with like simple little games that people can play at events, and kind of hoping that scales up and out to maybe more interesting engagements.
Awesome. Thank you, Austin. We'll all see you on BuilGuidl.
Amazing questions, Ro. Thank you so much. Aman, you have questions?
So, Austin, can guide us how we're taking care of the control private key. And then it's like a hot topic, so we like but the developer or that developer behind that everything like
Aman,
I
don't know if you can you please type, because I'm having a really hard time understanding. I think your mic is really low.
It kind of sounded like the question was just like taking care of private keys.
Awesome.
We could talk about that a little bit. I think it's really tricky, and it's different. It's different for almost every application and how you want your keys to, like how safe your keys need to be. I think that you have to find those solutions and do the research yourself. And like Ethereum.org has a really good explanation of this stuff. There are times when you have private keys in like local storage, and that's like very, very bad. And that's what we use in the burner wallet, and it's a great user experience, but it's also not like, you don't want to have a lot of money in that kind of thing. That's for like maybe like $10 or something, right? As you have more and more money and value behind the private key, you need to have a more and more secure storage situation.
Yeah, completely agree. That's a really hard one. I have a question from community here, which is, with all the new niches and directions that have emerged in the industry in recent years, such as ZK, and with innumerable layers of ideas, what is your opinion on approaching for selecting the right path? Do you find it overwhelming to make the bet, especially considering that it's still relatively new? So it's talking about getting within ZK. What is your view on that?
So we're talking about, there's new technologies like ZK, and it's hard to make a bet on them. Is that what you're saying? Like, how do you pick? How do you pick which ones? In this case, let's say we're spending the bet is like our time, right? And we're spending it on building on top of one ZK primitive or the other. And I think, yes, there's lots of stuff out there. I don't know. I follow the 0xPark guys very closely and get some good, like really good material from them. And I feel like the ZK space is really exciting. I think it's something that is really neat. And I think it depends on your use case. And that's kind of vague, but you should use the tutorial that works for you, I think, is maybe the way I'm trying to say it. You may need like voting, or you may need something else. And like the closest example you can find to that is the one you should use. And so, yeah, there is lots of stuff out there, but the ZK space is worth exploring. Keep going.
Awesome. Another question is tips for getting into tool building. What are the prerequisites?
Yeah, I think the best way to get started is go to SpeedRunEthereum or go pick up Scaffold ETH2 and just try to build something small. Like I always tell people to build like a to-do list first and just use that as like your to-do list in getting into Web3 or something that you'll use every day, and have like items in there and be able to check those items off, right? Have maybe some kind of storage in some way, and use it every day and upgrade it and make it a little nicer for yourself as you build it. And that will get you closer to building apps. From there, you can start tinkering with Solidity and get better with Solidity, and then tying the two together where you can make an app that talks to your smart contract. I think it really starts with something simple like making a to-do list in React.
Amazing stuff. Another question is, what are some best practices and considerations when it comes to code formatting collaborative software development environments?
I'm like bad at this. My developer environment is usually pretty gross. You can tell the difference between like Scaffold ETH1 and Scaffold ETH2. Scaffold ETH2 is like type safety, TypeScript, pretty formatted, like linted. All of it is type safe, and I appreciate those things. But sometimes when I want to build really fast, they get in the way. But so I'm like not a great person to ask about like best standards there. I would say check out Scaffold ETH2 and look at how Carlos and the team built it, and that's a great standard, I think.
Amazing. Another question that I have here is that this space requires you to always keep learning stuff. What does your learning process looks like? Do you read books? Do you go straight to tinkering about and without any formal learning?
Yeah, lots of like tinkering and Googling and ChatGPTing, and like with the goal of building something small and going end to end with it. So it's like, I want to sit down and I want to build like a fishing game. Okay, like this was at ETH Global, and it was like, how does a fishing game work? Like I wanted people to have a specific experience, and I thought of the experience and then worked backwards to how to make the contract. I wrote the contract, like maybe one or two functions, and then the front end talking to the contract, and just like the first few interactions and trying how, making it simple first and making a stupid simple prototype at first and then expanding it as it worked. But for learning new things, I think I force myself to go build something, and by doing that, I get stuck on a few things and I have to go learn a few things, and that causes kind of that process of discovery.
Amazing, buddy. I mean, those were the questions from our community. Love the interview. Do you have anything else to share, Austin?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun. I think that like I've already shilled it pretty hard, but SpeedRunEthereum is probably the best place to go. But if you're building apps, check out Scaffold ETH2. Just keep building stuff on Ethereum. We want to see that composability layer blossom.
Amazing stuff. I'll leave all links in the video description. So you're going to have the links to SpeedRunEthereum, Scaffold ETH, and Austin Twitter. Thank you guys so much for coming today, and talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
See you. Thank you.